Welcome to Permission to Evolve. I'm your host, Brandon Thielk. I'm a performance and life coach.
Holly Deschenes. I'm Brandon's co-host and producer for this podcast.
So today we're going to be getting into this topic of permission to be you and the different dynamics involved there. Particularly if you had a very survival-based childhood, generally there's a lot of compromises to ourselves that we have to adapt in that process. We talk a lot about the performance mindset or the strategies that we adopt in order to receive love or validation or approval. A lot of these things, it's very easy to lose your way. It's very easy to get disconnected. We're going to go into why that stuff happens and then also how to find yourself again and really allow that to flow through you a little bit more. But first, so I'm coming off some more travel. So I was down in Florida this week. And so me and Lauren spent a couple days in St. Augustine, it's the oldest city in America, apparently. So it's like south of Jacksonville. And yeah, it's super cool town. I don't know if you've been to like Charleston or Savannah or something like that, but
Yeah.
like that type of style. So there's like a historic district with all the old buildings. There's like an old schoolhouse that's like from the 1700s or something. It's I don't know, it's pretty wild, but yeah, so got some beach time, which is always good for me, and we got to explore that. And Lauren had never heard of it, so it was pretty cool to share that with her. So around Christmas time, they decked like the whole historic district out in Christmas lights, and it's a big kind of tourist draw. It's pretty cool to see. So I had been before and during Christmas time, and it was a cool little town. If anybody's curious about it, it's worth a visit. Then we went south, visited my mom, and it was my sister-in-law's 50th birthday, and she also just got her PhD. She's in hospital administration, so that was a good reason to get together with family. And we talk a lot about family here. We talk about the reason to engage and spend time with them, because you learn a lot about yourself. I'm pretty far along in my process and my healing journey. And it was good for me to spend some time and go through some of those dynamics. It gave me some stuff to meditate on coming back. And it's easy to like fall back into patterns. It's easy to show up as the child version of us in family gatherings. There's a lot of like hurt emotions generally. And it just gave me some new insights, some things to work on, particularly with my dynamic with my mom and one of my brothers. It's all good stuff. It's a little stressful in the moment, but I've been able to get some good insights on how I'd like to move forward with that stuff. So I think it was an interesting trip. Good to see everybody. And you're coming back from California.
I feel like between the two of us this summer, we've traveled a lot. We went out to Northern California, Redding specifically for the 70.3 that they just launched out there. This was the first year out there. So I'd never been to that part of California. I'm a big fan of the Central Coast. So anywhere, kind of between the Bay Area and Big Sur, I really love. So this was new to go that far, up the coast. We weren't that close to the coast, but we did drive out to the coast one day, and we did go to the Redwoods National Park, which is up there. So there's a lot of old growth redwood there, which is very cool, worth seeing. So in a similar thing, like if you have not done a trip to the redwoods in California, it is a religious experience. They're like
Yeah,
crazy. I mean, these
I
trees are
imagine.
like 1,500 years old. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, they're incredible. So we did that for one day before the race. The bulk of our time, though, we spent, kind of around race, getting ready for the race, racing, recovering from the race. So yeah, that was all really good. I know we have a few listeners who are into the triathlon thing for sure, and I would recommend. I think the town really showed up. They were super excited to have the Ironman there and really good volunteer support, even with as hot as it was. Bike course is beautiful. The lake, the swim was chaotic. As far as swims go, it was the hardest 70.3 swim I've ever done. But that had nothing to do with how beautiful the lake is. The lake is beautiful. The water is
Mhm.
really clear. I felt like there was good support there. The run is mostly on this like shaded path. There are some sections of it that got really hot and were kind of exposed, but for the most part, it was shaded and again, well supported. They did a good job, I think, of preparing for the weather. So it was a little cooler that day than what they originally predicted. It was predicted to be like 105. And there was some worry that they would shorten the course in some way based on the temperature. It ended up being in the upper 90s, so not quite 105, still plenty hot.
Yeah.
Um, but they put extra aid stations on both the bike and the run. So they had twice as many aid stations for both than what a
That's
normal race
that's
would
good.
have. Yeah. So it felt very, very well covered. We went out there with some friends and we sat through a whole slot allocation process for Ironman. So I have a better understanding of how it works in the new system. I don't love it. I have
Yeah.
a better understanding as to why people are so upset about it now that I've actually witnessed it and seen how it works. Yeah, it's not, it feels like a miss, particularly for women. I don't know if Ironman will stick with it long term
Yeah.
or
I've heard a
what.
lot of uproar about it. Not
Yeah.
too familiar with it, but
It is too much to unpack on this podcast. I mean, I'm sure
Mhm.
there are triathlon podcasts that can dive deep into the math of how they do this now, but it's
Mhm.
just it feels way too complicated and not actually beneficial.
Hard
Um,
to know what to shoot for.
yeah. So yeah, I don't know that there's any other like huge call outs. I for me personally racing this one, it was like a big sort of feeling of I raced this one very much with like maybe more gratitude than other races that I've done. We've talked about on past episodes briefly the car accident I was in this spring. Just coming back from that has been extremely difficult and much harder than what I thought. And I will say, you and I talked earlier today, and I didn't bring this up, but I'll bring it up now. I think that comebacks are often like romanticized things of you're going to have this like moment in your comeback from injury or comeback from something tragic or whatever. You know, we can thank Hollywood for like the belief in that sort of like picture.
Yeah, they're good at
Um,
that.
but there was nothing romantic about this at all for me. It was very much hard and humbling and uncomfortable. And so I really had to reframe it as gratitude that I was able to do it and that nothing, that this accident that happened back in April, that nothing else was lost as a result of that other than my run fitness. So,
It's really important to find some positive ideas to latch onto because, yeah, we can very easily get stuck in the accident or whatever took something away from me, and that can make us stuck in the past, right? So, the ability to see things, get up to speed with where you're at, and try to plug into some sort of gratitude is usually a good call. But yeah, it's just giving something the mind to occupy because if I dip too much into what's happened in the past, that energy is going to gather. And then that's where my focus is going to go on excuses on why I shouldn't finish or like any of that type of stuff. It's going to give us reasons to give us an out. That's where we can fall into like the victimhood type thinking. So yeah, it's super cool that you're able to shift out of that and even, and the, just the nature of it is a struggle, like regardless of if things are going perfect or not. And so it's just that extra emphasis. Yeah, I was going to ask, so like Mount Shasta is like up by there, isn't it?
yeah, so we didn't actually go to Mount Shasta, but you could see it. It is the highest peak in that area. It's like 14,000 feet, I think. I think it's 14,000 feet. But we didn't drive over. It was a couple hours east of where we were. We didn't drive all the way to Mount Shasta. We did go to the Shasta Lake, which is this huge lake in the mountains that sort of like runs. I don't know how long it is all the way around, but it like sort of runs through the valley. It's a long, like meandering lake that kind of goes in between the mountains up there. We did drive up there the day after the race and we thought we were gonna do like this cave tour that goes like next to the lake, kind of. But that tour required 800 steps, like steps.
Okay. Yeah.
And there was no way that post-race legs were
No.
climbing or descending. Descending was really the problem, that
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
stairs. So,
hmm Well, yeah, being in like the spiritual world and stuff. Well, you always hear about Shasta along with like Sedona and Arizona. There's something about those places. So yeah, I was just kind of curious if you got to experience it, because yeah, in Sedona, they have the vortexes, they call them. But yeah, it's just where all the spiritual people go. And I tend to see people speak in Mount Shasta as a similar manner. So I was kind of curious about that.
it's a cool place. That part of California is very cool in the mountains. But yeah, we didn't actually go to Mount Shasta. I yeah. I guess when I think of spiritual places in California, me personally, I think of Joshua Tree first. But
Oh, okay. Haven't
yeah,
been there yet either.
Joshua Tree is cool too.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe
Well,
we'll
cool.
have to
So
go and do a
yeah,
content
do
trip to
a
Joshua Tree or something. Yeah.
just do a California adventure.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So do you have a question to start us off?
Sure. So this is from the trip actually. I don't watch a lot of movies on planes, but I do listen to a lot of podcasts. So this did come from a podcast. And this is about judgment. So my question is, how do you think about judgment? I recently heard on this podcast someone talk about it as a cover for a feeling you won't allow yourself to feel. Do you agree with that?
But yeah, I think I wholeheartedly agree with that. Judgment, that's what like determines our experience, and it's actually how we program our nervous system is how I see something and what I decide about it. That's how I start filtering information. So a lot of times the things that we don't allow ourselves to feel, or the unconscious parts of us that are unresolved, that carries an emotional charge to it. When we have an emotion, our mind's job is to tell us a story about why we're feeling that way. So when I am judging somebody else harshly, especially, that's going to mean that there's an aspect of me that's I'm like judging myself through a certain lens. So we talk a lot about how relationships are a mirror, but it's also whoever we bump up against and interact with is a mirror for us to a certain extent, where they're showing us about ourselves. So if there's something I have unresolved, if there's something locked away in shame, I'm gonna go ahead and shame that other person. I'm gonna project what I feel onto them. When we do healing work, when we unpack shame, when we work through these things, there is just generally more grace and understanding for other people. We start to surrender judgment. We start to be able to put ourselves in their shoes. And oftentimes judgments typically, it's just a younger version of ourselves. Maybe I was operating in a similar manner as this person is now, and I'm ashamed of that. I'm going to shame that behavior because that's that's a locked away aspect of me. So yeah, there is a lot of truth to that. And if you really dig into this stuff, it's always gonna, because we always want to like pretend we're a certain way, or that we've always been this way or evolved or whatever it is. And our ego is designed to protect us. So it's going to try to maintain the self image that serves us and that puts our best foot forward. It is a lot of these things we're not willing to admit, that like, hey, yeah, maybe I used to be that way, or I used to do those things, or I used to believe that type of stuff. Or it doesn't actually have to be our direct experience. It could have been, the judgments we absorbed from our parents. Maybe they had pretty like harsh judgments or fixed thoughts or beliefs about things, and they repeated things over and over again. And so we started to absorb that. That's that part of us that's kind of operating from that negative place about a certain idea. It is about questioning our judgment. That's a big part of, I would say in a nutshell, that's what this work is if I'm stuck in the past, it just means I've locked in a previous judgment, and that's affecting my perception of the situation. And I can't move forward until I shift that judgment to a softer place, something more open. But, judgments are how we protect ourselves. It's a system that's designed to keep us safe, but it's also very oftentimes it does hold us back, because if we're not questioning our judgment, we're cementing those things so that we believe them absolutely to be true. And once again, it's this idea I'm trying to protect myself. So somebody's behavior, like I might think that's like a threat to me. And it might come from knowledge of maybe when I used to operate that way and the problems I created for myself based on those behaviors. So pretty complex, but it's being able to see ourselves and other people, kind of going back to the spiritual stuff. It's when you get windows into these deeper layers, it's like everybody is a reflection of us, right? They're just different experiences or different versions that are being lived out. And so if I'm judging something, I'm judging myself. So it's always an internal and an external thing. What we try to do here is we resolve the judgment and we replace it with some truth or something more aligned with you. And that is where we're able to give people grace. If I'm judging somebody very harshly, that's generally a sign that I have a lot of internalized shame. I'm judging myself harshly as well. So, which all puts a ton of stress on our system, and it really narrows our world and makes it pretty small. I start to become more rigid the more shame I carry, and I start to be more harsh with other people the more shame I carry. So we want to work through that and resolve that and develop some self-compassion. And the more self-compassion I have, the more compassionate I can be towards other people. So all these things, we work on the relationship with ourselves first, and then it naturally kind of resets how we interact with other people. And these things are just reminders of the burdens and the things I carry inside. And if it's bringing a reaction out of me, that's just some information for me to work with. And we're always just trying to bring things to a neutral place. We don't have to get to the place of like, oh, like I love everybody and unconditionally and all that. We're in a human body. We have these limitations, and some people are very tough to love. Some people do damaging things, and it's hard not to judge that stuff. But often it's just a reflection of the things they're operating from, like their own personal history, things that have happened to them, and based on what's happened to them, they think it's like a good strategy to be operating this way. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question. But yeah, I think that's a very powerful one. That there's so many layers to it. And this idea of judgment is so important because that's really what cuts off our connection from another person, regardless of who it is.
All right. So we're going to talk about permission to be you. I'm guessing there'll be a little bit of authenticity kind of brought in on this, but interested to hear kind of maybe what inspired this one for you and see what direction we're going to head with it.
Well, no direct inspiration really, but yeah, I had a busy morning and this is what popped in my head. So yeah, I'm curious to see how it comes out. Oh yeah, so permission to be you. It's like I said, if we have a survival-based living to start off with, there's generally volatile emotions, there's manipulations, there's a lot of push to conform to certain ways of being in order to stay safe. Even in better situations, there's the societal pressures. So we have to present ourselves to the world, and the world has a certain way of operating. Yeah, so it's easy to get kind of caught up in this stuff of like, oh, well, this is just what everybody else does. And so like I have to follow suit to a certain degree, like, yeah, like you need to be functional in the world, but also there doesn't have to be so many like sacrifices made. There doesn't have to be so many personal betrayals. But, a lot of us do learn early on that I have to be a certain way in order to receive love from the people around me, the acceptance of the people around me. If we look back 20, 30 years, it's like the idea of like emotions was a very like negative connotation, but you weren't supposed to feel them, you're supposed to suppress them, you're supposed to put on the straight face and that kind of thing. And so the emotions are the data we work with. That's how I know whether I'm in tune with myself or not. If I'm not allowed to feel emotions, then it's very easy for me to get off track because I'm left to my ego or my mind to try and navigate life. It's just I'm externally oriented. I'm trying to align with certain ideas to be more acceptable to others, to gain praise, validation, all that stuff. And so oftentimes the things that get rewarded in society, like, that might be us betraying ourselves. If we look at, like the obsession with money and things like that, well, does everybody need to be a billionaire and that kind of thing? But all that stuff's like propped up so much, right? It's, oh, this is what everybody wants. And then, that's where you kind of have your artists and people like that, or musicians that they're connected to that stuff because there's like soul to it, right? It's like they don't want to align. A lot of it is based on rebellion of like the status quo of I'm I don't want to be this way, and so I'm going to go do this. And then you go through those phases of it. If I'm not aligning with society, like things are like harder, right? I have to learn to make money somehow doing this thing I love. Not everybody's going to get it, or, I might be early on in my journey where, people don't know me yet and that kind of stuff. It's this ability to stay true to yourself. It's a very difficult path. And, there is that quote, it takes courage to be who you truly are. I don't know. I think that was like from Winnie the Pooh or something, or, but there's a lot of truth to that, to like really stand up and maintain your center and not give into all the temptations of life or needing to gain the acceptance and approval of other people. We can, a lot of times, deviating from that stuff makes us feel misunderstood, and that we feel judged by others. And that's that connection that's lost, is like, this person doesn't understand me. And then I'm kind of left to my own devices, right? So if I'm left out from the crowd, now it's like I'm left alone with myself. And most of us, like, especially early on, we tend to be harsh on ourselves. We don't have this healthy relationship. And so it's very difficult to be put in those positions. So a lot of getting off track from who you are is aligning with what's normal. And there is judgment thrown on people that are weird or different or that kind of thing, or don't want to participate in the same way. And so, yeah, that's that journey. The people that can stay more connected to that, it's harder on the front end, but like as you get later in life, like that's like the stuff that's rewarded, is like, this person's unique and different, and they've developed this skill set, and they have this unique perspective, and all that stuff. That's that gauntlet that I commonly talk about, is that separation of like, well, I'm willing to like risk everything to like stay true to myself. That does take a lot of courage, and it's a very difficult path. There is this, there are some families with a lot of like expectations of like, this is who you're going to be. This is what you have to do, like all that stuff. And so if I go against that, now I feel like I'm betraying my family. I feel like, and there's guilt attached to these things. And so it's very difficult to sort out internally. It's like going through all those emotions is what allows us to connect back to ourselves, because the most painful things for any of us is like when we like knew better and like went against that. When I knew this wasn't right for me, but I felt like I had to, like that type of stuff. There's like these lines where we feel like we don't have a choice, but we kind of do. And especially during childhood, we don't really have much of a choice in many manners. And so it's easy to get kind of plugged into these things of, well, because when I betray myself, I feel like I've lost part of myself. And that's where we get stuck, is I feel like I'm missing something now. And so we think that going and aligning with the normal things is what's going to give us that back to us. But it always leaves us chasing our tail. It's reconciling that within us of, well, like nothing's ever truly lost. I might just be like suppressing or shutting down aspects of myself in order to exist. And we can always unlock that stuff, but our environments might not allow for that. The more work you do on this level, the more like you learn not to sacrifice those parts, the more you learn that it's not worth the mental, emotional pain of betraying yourself. But you start to get stronger, and then you start to align your life to be more authentic, right? To be more in alignment with who I really am. And you start to think deeper and question things on a different level of, is this all there is for me, is to just do what everybody else does? I don't think any of us like came here like with that intention that like, I'm just going to kind of fall in line and just do what everybody else does, but it's got a momentum to it. That's the easier stream. And a lot of especially earlier on, we feel like we have to do those things. It's really hard to stand up to those pressures and to go against the grain. That's in a nutshell how we get lost, how we get disconnected. And it is like quite literally like that's a common experience for everybody. Like everybody struggles with this. Nobody, you can't walk through life and not be like unscathed. You can't, because there is just so much expectation and pressures to conform. And so to really branch out, you go back and you retrieve those parts of you that you thought you lost. We can always get back to that, but as you disconnect from these parts of you, go live your life, and then you go back to unearth them and retrieve them. The cool part about it is now they're like, as you become more developed, as you evolve, like you carry more wisdom. And so when you open these gifts back up, they have more of a purpose to them. They have more of a power to them because we're bringing this elevated version of us to it rather than like the original like child version where, in childhood, we have certain tendencies and things like that, but it's not like developed yet, right? So when I go to open these things back up, it gives me these new skills, new ways of looking at things. And that's really what makes me unique and different is this ability to bring all of me to the table. And that's what, they've even talked about with authenticity, like the quality of your voice changes. People can feel you more because you're not filtering yourself. Okay. So when we get off track and we conform, we're filtering ourselves to align with this external idea. It makes us less potent. It makes us filtered down. And so when we start to open that back up, it's a rare thing, because you have to go through all these steps to really connect on that level, that once you like open it back up, there's like so much strength behind it. It does strengthen you on so many levels. And it's really this relationship to yourself of like early on, we usually conform to gain the love and acceptance of others, but then it's that choice to want that for myself. Once I decide to move this way, I'm really working out the relationship with myself so that I can be good with me. Right. So I feel safe at home. I feel like I don't have to filter myself, where I feel like I can live for my heart, for my intentions. And that's say, we're always distracted by this stuff over here because, there is the day to day trying to get through life and trying to figure things out. And there's just some basic fundamentals that, everybody has to figure out. Like you need a place to live, you need food, you need all those things. And so the further along you get, you just try and find better ways to meet those needs rather than like, oh, I have to like go work this job that makes me miserable every day, or I have to go be with these people that like I really don't like all the time. It's refusing to compromise is what like kind of straightens it out so that we can find our opportunities to meet those needs on different levels.
If you're on this, journey to finding yourself, there's a couple things I think that can get misconstrued. Right? Like some people hear the idea of like be you and they take that as license to be a jerk. Right? Like, oh,
Right.
well, that means I can say whatever I want to say or I can do whatever I want to do. That's
That's
not what you
usually,
mean.
yeah, that's just an
Yeah.
overcompensation for a wound. Yeah.
So I was thinking about that and then as you were talking, but then also there's so much it feels like that we unlearn. And so we say things to your point of like the quote coming from Winnie the Pooh, right? Like this is a child's story. And so like we
I
say
don't
these
know.
one things, but either way, it's the same, right?
Yeah.
Like we say
Yeah.
all of these things to kids about like you can be anything you want to be and you can like
Yeah.
and then when it comes to like making those decisions later in life or like be practical, right?
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
take the safe
Yeah.
job, make the most money, right? So these things are like also in conflict, like from the time we're pretty little.
But yeah, it's just that mixed messaging. Well, and that's the thing. I think that's what's like special about childhood is you don't have responsibilities yet, typically. And so there is this like, oh yeah, like be a dreamer, like you can do whatever you want. But then yeah, it hits a certain point, people are like, okay, yeah, you just need to be like everybody else, right? There is a switch that happens and people tend to like not have much tolerance like when it comes to that line and somebody's still like being a dreamer. they try to crush that though, because they had to suppress that in themselves. That's usually where that comes from, is they're doing something they don't like because they feel like they have to. It kind of pokes at those wounds of like they had to shut that aspect of themselves down. That's, misery loves company, that kind of thing of like people like they can relate more to like the dream dying than you like breaking through, right? So it's more comfortable generally for people to be like, oh yeah, like I tried and failed, and so then I had to just do all the normal things. That that kind of validates the person that never tried, right? Being like, oh well, yeah, that's why I didn't try, is because it doesn't work out, right? That's it. It does like it's such a strange thing. I know I encountered this where it just does bring a lot of like intense, weird emotions out of people, and I think it is that split of like, okay, you got to grow up now, and so you just do these things, and it doesn't matter if you like it or not. And so I think that's a deep wound for most people, is they didn't give themselves that permission to pursue anything, or they were too worried about like the financial components that they weren't like willing to struggle, like that kind of stuff. And yeah, so there's regret and all that mixed in there. Going back to your first example, yeah, that is common, but that's also part of the process too. So when I'm on this journey to like be me, I am going to be I'm starting off wounded on that journey every time. But it's going to be, okay, I'm going to go try to do this, but I have these wounds, and so it does come out that way initially. The being ridiculous and being mean to other people, like all because you're in this wounded place trying to protect yourself, and you're trying to maintain this part of like, I'm trying to figure out who I actually am now. That's quite a journey. Some could argue that would take your lifetime to figure out, and you still might not do it. But it's coming from that place of I'm trying to protect myself, and so I'm gonna overcompensate based on the wound. Okay, so then that's very different than somebody being authentic and it's embodied, where they're like really just at peace with themselves. But that is a necessary stage, is to like go through the I'm wounded, so I am going to be overcompensating, but that's trying to create space so that I can actually like sort this thing out. It's easy to kind of mock that stuff. It's easy to be, but when you're at peace with yourself, you're a kind person. You're not going to be doing those things because you don't feel like you have to. Anytime I'm not being kind is I'm trying to protect myself from some sort of pain. There's like the crossing boundaries and all that stuff, but that's where we have access to healthy anger, where it's just like, hey, like you crossed the line, and so I can stand up for myself. Most of the time that's still going to be done in a respectful manner, like if you're really at peace with yourself. But if I'm overcompensating, that is always going to look kind of cringy. It's going to feel off. It's going to look like, harmful things were done to me, so it doesn't matter what I do to other people, or I was treated this way, so I'm going to treat other people this way. It's going to come from that place, which is not clean at all. But that's like the beginning stages of trying to like get back to yourself, is you're at where you're at and you think like that's what it looks like. But the further along you get, the more peace you come to, it starts to straighten out and clean up, where you don't really need to be that way anymore.
So if someone is, let's say we're past that, we're not gonna do that part of it. Although I am interested in the flip side. So maybe before I go into this other question, we should talk about the flip side of like the person who's like finding their way to themselves, but they're not, that phase maybe isn't expressed the same way. Could there be a version of that that's more like shrinking or withdrawing versus like,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Well, and so that's the thing. So if we like see people that have acted that way, and we're like, I don't want to be that way, then I'm naturally going to like swing the other way, which is kind of more shut down and suppressed. I'm going to like maybe put up with stuff, but it's still like, that's where people get like flaky and things like that. They're like non-confrontational. So they're attempting to find themselves, but it just kind of shows up as like elusive and shut down, where they're not owning their power to express themselves. The other person's probably doing it too much. And all these things are a balance. And this thing is like, if I'm being me, like I don't need to like tell you that like, hey, I'm being me. It's kind of like all these things. Insecure people will always tell you they're not insecure, right? It's like
Sure.
all those,
Sure.
all the, yeah, we always like tell on ourselves, right? So it's just like me being me, like it's just me being at peace with myself and acting from that place. And I'm not trying to prove myself. I'm not trying to get validation from others. I don't feel like I need to earn love from others, like that kind of thing. And so there's like a calmness to that. But if I'm trying to convince you of something, that means exactly the opposite. Usually that means like, I'm considering this idea, like it sounds good to me, but I don't really even know how to do it. But that's that part of the process where, like, of course, like if you've like spent your whole life just conforming or aligning with expectations of others, you're not going to know what it's like to live for yourself or to get to this connected place. It's always this idea, we address it a lot. It doesn't mean be a selfish person. It doesn't mean you're all that matters, but it is also the put your oxygen mask on first type stuff where, okay, if I'm operating from a not clean place, I don't really have much to offer other people, right? So I want to build myself up first in order to be able to hold that energy in a clean way. And so these are just all like stepping stones that we go through, because a lot of time, yeah, people like have this desire to serve and they think that means like giving up all of themselves for other people. And that's out of balance because then they end up burnt out and depleted and they're not appreciated and that kind of thing. And so all these things are attempts to like become this version that we want to be, but it takes a while to get there. We have to smooth out the road. And so that means like coming to terms with these different ideas. Like a lot of people like don't allow themselves to feel anger. Maybe they were around a parent that was pretty volatile emotionally and they didn't like that. And so they refuse to be that way. So they won't allow themselves to feel anger. Right. But then, we're starting to see now this Dr. Gabor Mate, he talks a lot about this, where the people that don't allow themselves to feel anger always get autoimmune diseases, right? Because all that anger is just like locked up inside themselves and they're like, their body starts attacking itself. Okay. He's just like, yeah, one of the things I do is teach people like healthy anger, right? Because we just view it as this entirely negative emotion if that's what our experience is from. But it does. Anger is like what allows us to create boundaries and be like, hey, like you crossed the line here, this is too much, like I feel violated, whatever it is. It's that ability to assert yourself when needed. And with all these things, it's we tend to like pick and choose, like this is okay and this isn't. But we have all these emotions for a reason. Even shame, it's just like, oh, I did something wrong, I hurt somebody, but do I need to like punish myself the rest of my life because of that? It's like I'm feeling this for a reason. It's information for me. Yeah, I just need access to all of it. I need access to anger when I need it. Do I want to be in anger all the time? No. Sadness, yeah. If I need to go through my sadness. I need to grieve. I need to feel those things. If it's not okay to be sad and I shut that down, like that's going to be wreaking havoc on our system, right? So it's just this ability to like feel your emotions because that's what teaches you. That's how you grow. That's how you learn is allowing yourself to feel all of it. It's the human experience and we experience it through the feeling sensation and then we tell ourselves stories about it, right? So it serves me to tell a story that allows me to move forward, not stay stuck. One that hopefully has like some trust and some faith built in where like, hey, like I know I'm going through a hard time, but I know I'll see better days. Like I just have to get through this and I have to like accept this moment for everything it brings. And so there's going to be tough emotions, but they're there. So I might as well feel them. And then I know I'm going to come out of it. And once we do, we want to have a mindset that supports that. Cause if I'm not processing emotions, my mind like literally gets stuck in the past. This is where toxic positivity isn't helpful, is because we maybe like don't like being around people that are judgmental or negative, and so we think it's all bad. Okay. But I'm not allowing myself to feel this whole other half of the human experience. I'm like pretending like everything's great when it's actually not, right? And it's just, we want to function from reality where we can go through the full range of things because that's what allows us to integrate. That's what allows us to embody is is through the emotional experiences how we grow through things. But if I'm just staying in my mind about it and telling myself these stories, I'm not actually feeling things. And so it's all this stuck energy in the body. And that's what prevents me from moving forward, actually, is like I haven't come to terms or reality with the situation. And so my body won't allow me to move forward. It's shutting me down until like I look at this stuff. It's just catching this rhythm where it's the acceptance of all of life, right? It's like, yeah, there's terrible things, there's great things, it's everything. And if I'm rejecting any aspect of it, I'm locking that into my nervous system. You don't have to agree with everything. You don't have to, yeah, like, but it's like our emotional experience is important, and it's giving us information to clean up our thinking and allow us to continue to evolve and develop. If I'm just blocking out aspects of things, like I'm missing part of the picture. And whatever that is, like if I'm not allowing myself to feel it, one, it's locked in my body, but two, I'm like, I'm building lies around that story to make me feel okay. And the longer I do that, the more disconnected from reality I get. So it's by feeling our emotions that we're allowed to become present and just in the moment and capable, where we can move through whatever life gives us.
Great. If we're going to leave our listeners with a handful of things that you hope they take away from today's episode, what would those be?
One, that it's all okay, that, if you don't fully feel like yourself, that is literally like everybody. It's like we've all been through life. We all have things we struggle with. We all feel the pressures to meet needs in a certain way, and there's a way that has a current to it. That's like, yeah, I just have to get on this track, and I'll be taken care of in this way. It's first we check the survival box. We need to meet our needs first. It's like the Maslow period, like pyramid of human needs
Hierarchy
or
of
whatever.
needs.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. You got to like hit all the levels, right? So you don't get to like self-realization like when you're in survival, right? It's like you have to check those boxes and you have to graduate. It's a process. So once I'm in survival, I can start out of survival, I can start to think of these other things. I can be like, okay, well, like now I start to prioritize, like, how do I connect to myself on a deeper level? Like, how do I start to live more authentically? And the way, we look back to our past for clues. What do I really enjoy? What things excite me? Who was I when I was a kid? Is there some qualities there that I had to shut down? What's more of my true nature? That stuff, it's always there waiting for us. It's just getting yourself to the place where you can start to open that up, and we do that in safety, right? So I need to meet survival first, and I need to get some details sorted out. And in that, once I'm feeling better about that, now I can start to explore these other things and open them up, and try and get back to this place where I can feel really connected to myself. And when I'm more connected to myself, I can connect to others more easily. And getting out of survival just means I'm not trying to protect myself from everything anymore. I'm starting to kind of see nuance. I'm not in this all or none thinking. I'm not in the catastrophizing and all that. So our mind plays all these tricks on us, and so it's finding ways to look at situations that allows us to move forward. And so generally it's going to be like this neutral to positive outlook, but we get that by addressing the things that don't feel good. We have to go into the feelings that we haven't allowed ourselves to feel, and we have to move through those, because if we don't, they're always in the background and they're always feeding us negative thoughts. They're trying to remind us of things that have happened to us. And if I continue to give into those voices, now I'm like living a life where I'm basically stuck in the past, and I just keep recreating versions of that over and over again. And so if I allow myself to move through the emotions, that's what allows me to be more present. So, and when I'm at peace with myself, we really start to, that's where I can live from this more authentic place, is I'm no longer trying to align with expectations. I'm just acting from my heart. And in that's going to be a clean version. We're not going to be a mean person from that place. We're going to have kindness. We're going to have care. We still can feel anger. Like, that's okay too. We can still get upset and disappointed. It's just about seeing these things as not such a big deal. Like, negative things that happen to me like don't have to be the end of the world anymore. It's about stabilizing yourself and finding this mindset that gives you this continuous path forward. The truth is, if you're still standing, if you're still alive, everything's worked out to you to this point. You've gotten through it. And the question is like, how do you want to move forward? Like, we need this brighter future. We need something to focus on to start to realize ourselves. And that's about becoming more. And a lot of times about becoming more is revealing more of us, and it's unlocking the suppressed version of us, right? So it's just me clearing the blocks so that things can flow for me rather than me having to be somebody else. So it's just, I need access to all of me to live my best life. And I'm going to do that when I'm in alignment and in peace with my past. So you get to be you when you reconcile these things, when you let things go, when you forgive, when you make peace with the past. And we do that, we extract lessons from it. That's how you evolve your mindset is as you start to unpack the painful things that have happened to you and you learn new things because of that. And you start to shift your perception on how you see those things. It wasn't a curse, it was actually a blessing. It developed you in certain ways that had to happen for you to become who you are. And some of these things are very difficult to accept and it takes a lot of work, but it's a worthwhile journey because the more I filter myself, the more miserable I'm going to be. Right. So if I have a clean signal running through me, that's naturally going to be contentment, fulfillment, and joy. I'm not going to be in this place of needing other things to make me happy. It's like I can be happy now and I can also want more for myself. So it's like holding multiple truths. Like it's like I can feel good about what I've got going on and I can be wanting to work towards other things, but I'm not looking for that thing to solve all my problems. I'm doing it because I want to do it. So it's everything's the energy you're bringing to the table. And so authenticity is just like I stopped filtering myself and that initial stage, me being unfiltered is pretty raw and it's laced with a lot of pain. That might look a little ridiculous, but eventually you get to that place of, well, it's a lot cleaner now. And I speak when necessary and I do the things that I want to do. And I also have the heart for other people to help out when needed. It's a mixture of all of it. You just stop, operating from these like snap judgments and trying to build this bubble around your life. You really expand it and open it up. And then from that place, like kind of the sky's the limit. You have unlimited possibilities that can flow into you because you're not trying to protect yourself from everything.
That's good. If anyone is curious about your work or interested in working with you, what's the best places for them to find you? And I don't know if you got anything else you wanna share.
Yeah. So if you're curious about this work and want to chat, you can reach out on my website, brandonthilk.com, and schedule a free 30-minute strategy session. I just get to know a little bit about you and share how this work can help you. And if you want to register for my newsletter, that's the lightning report. I send it out weekly with updates on the business, recap of the podcast, and then some insights for the week. You can register for that on my website as well. And on social media, if you want to follow along on YouTube and Instagram at Brandon Thielk, I would post out there regularly. Also on TikTok at bthielk. Please like, subscribe, follow. Would love to hear from you. If there's any specific topics you'd like to hear about, please share those. Would love to support you in a bigger way.
Yeah, for sure. We are going to be getting ready for another Ask Me Anything episode. So just going to throw this out there here at the end of if you have any questions that you would like to submit for the Ask Me Anything episode, please send those via DM or email. Links for everything Brandon mentioned will be in the show notes.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Talk to you later, Brandon.